The first round of talks in Egypt following the initiatives that were happening to reach a ceasefire deal inside of the Gaza Strip, it took place. Some people were saying that it went on positively, despite the fact that there are many issues surrounding certain details that the Palestinian resistance demands, and also Benjamin Netanyahu insists on, especially to do with the day after, what they call the day after. The Hamas delegation reached Cairo and they spoke with the mediators. The mediators were moving between the Israeli delegation and the senior Palestinian delegation, talking about the proposals and the technical issues, things on the ground that need to be done so that they can reach a ceasefire. From an Israeli perspective, the people who they sent in their delegation primarily focused on the security arrangements and logistic developments on the ground that would prepare the ground for a ceasefire agreement and a prisoner exchange. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is a man who previously broke several ceasefires. He added certain conditions to prevent any ceasefire from happening, and now isn't very different from previous times where he's trying to be as difficult as possible, despite the fact that the American President Donald Trump is now saying that, yeah, Hamas are fine and we're going ahead, him publishing the acceptance of Hamas, and him, of course, being very, very obsessed with this Nobel Peace Prize thing and trying to reach something very quickly. Chances are it's not really going to happen very quickly. Number one, the Israeli genocidal terror forces are still conducting massacres inside of the Gaza Strip. Official reports coming from Gaza say that over 107 people were martyred. Scenes and images that I posted on my other social networks, X primarily, showed horrific actions coming from the Israeli side, children being killed still to this day. That's despite the fact that Donald Trump's agreement itself spoke about Israel having a ceasefire, no hostilities. The Israeli army even confirmed that they are in defensive measures now, but we clearly know what Israel's defensive measures are. In Israel, there is no defense. There is only aggression, a terror entity that only commits terrorism against its own people and against its neighboring countries. Hamas, from their perspective, they're telling the delegation these moves that Israel is conducting will be damaging. They're not going to help moving forward with anything to do with the release of the prisoners of war. So something has to happen. Of course, the Palestinian resistance isn't sitting there doing nothing. They had huge ambushes against the Israeli terror forces in the past couple of days, and they also launched missiles on Israel near the Gaza border, just outside of the Gaza Strip, according to several reports. The Palestinian resistance is not going to be beaten, and its weapons are not going to be taken away from them. That is a red line for the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian people. It's a consensus. Some people are trying to sell the notion that the Palestinian people need to disarm. Funny enough, American officials who support guns in their own countries under the pretext that they protect people and they prevent crime and they reduce crime, they want to disarm a whole nation, a whole people going through a genocide. It's absurd, isn't it? How far they go with their propaganda. But again, it's a proof of how much of a huge failure really this whole campaign is. The Egyptian leadership is also now protecting the arms of the Palestinian resistance. There was a statement coming from the Egyptian foreign minister, Badr Abdel Ati, saying that dealing with Hamas's weapons is a Palestinian matter. That's not something that Arab or Muslim forces are going to try and enforce on behalf of Israel inside of Gaza, like Benjamin Netanyahu is hoping. And this gives a backing to the Palestinian negotiators during the talks because of the impossibility of that happening. The people facing genocide will not be giving up their arms. The only country that should be giving up its arms is the terrorist entity that committed and still commits a barbaric genocide, killing infants, fetuses, and children every single day inside of the Gaza Strip. That's what should be disarmed. The big question is, in the whole negotiation process, is whether the negotiating delegation would be able to come up with a certain formula to have a deal and implement it on the ground. Benjamin Netanyahu has militias in Gaza. As a matter of fact, there were reports that Israel began neglecting some of these militias inside of the Gaza Strip after all of the situations that have been happening now, and reports that the Palestinian side is going to remain powerful, especially with the Palestinian resistance. The fact that the Palestinian resistance threatened these militias that are tied with Israel and also tied with ISIS at the same time. But the reason why I wanted to speak about this movement, this particularly Abu Shabab movement inside of the Gaza Strip, is that Benjamin Netanyahu could potentially order this movement in case any ceasefire agreement goes ahead. He can order them to conduct a certain operation that he would later use as a pretext to attack Gaza again. So even if we don't really have any issues, or if things go ahead, Benjamin Netanyahu still has an option, alongside, of course, his constant breaching of the ceasefire agreement, to create something new. What's going to be different this time? The only thing that's going to be different this time is the fact that the Palestinian side is asking for developments to happen before they release the prisoners of war. Israel is saying, we want to release the prisoners of war first, then we're going to talk about all of the other stuff. It is extremely unlikely for the Palestinian resistance to hand in all of the prisoners of war, dead and alive, before any certain developments take place. This map that Donald Trump published about Gaza and Israel's retreat borders, that's most likely not going to be implemented on the ground. The Palestinian resistance would demand something more than that to have any sort of release. And they also would need to tie Israel's hands. Benjamin Netanyahu knows very well that his hands will be tied, and that's why he did not enter an agreement before. Because otherwise he could have entered an agreement and went back to the war, genocide, and continued his barbarism inside of the Gaza Strip. But clearly the guarantees that the Palestinian side is requesting will tie Benjamin Netanyahu's hands. Now the big question is, will Netanyahu's hands be tied before or after the release of the prisoners of war?